Today we're going to turn an elephant. This is a fun little project, whether you're a novice turner or an intermediate turner. I want to give a shout out to Epoxy Wood for the video that inspired me to do this, and I'm going to show you how I turn one and how you might want to turn one as well. I'll have a link to her video at the end of mine. Alright, we're starting with a piece of, in my case, red oak, 2 3/4 inches square by about 9.5 inches. Your size might vary. I'm going to show you some project measurements so you can scale yours up or down in just a moment. Alright, let's turn this between centers, get it round, then we're going to put a chuck tendon on it. We'll get the speed up a little bit, maybe up 1500. Add a tenon, fit my chuck. Okay, we got a flat spot here, but we'll take care of that after we reverse this and put it in a chuck. I prefer dried wood for this project, but any dried, or in this case I'm going to use green wood. We'll see how it works out. I'm using, I mentioned before, I think red oak, and that's the one, that's the same wood I used for the first one. And I think with the size of this we can avoid cracking. I think the oak is a especially good choice because it has these nice rays, medullary rays, and has some nice grain. Doing this out of a plain ordinary piece of plain Jane vanilla Bradford pear or something, I don't think would look nearly as nice, or even a piece of a cherry. So now let's talk about dimensions. This project's only going to take 4 parts. You could turn them out of individual pieces of wood, but I prefer to start off with a long one because I think it's a little faster, and I had a long blank that was suitable. So you can scale yours up and down based on my diagram here, based on how far what your X is. So we're going to turn first. We're going to turn the head. That's going to be 40% of the diameter. So in my case, I'm going to make the height of the elephant 10 centimeters. I'm going to work in metric because I find it a little easier on these kinds of projects. So 65% of 10 centimeters is going to be 6.5 centimeters. So we're going to go ahead and set, that's going to be the width, and we're already there now that we've got it rounded. And I'm going to measure this and set off 10 centimeters. Okay, I like to start off with a parting cut to make it clear where I'm beginning this project from. Don't go down too deep. Now we're going to take this down. This is going to be the head. In case for the head, we're going to make the diameter 40% of X. X we said is a 10 centimeters, so it's going to be 4 centimeters. So let's go ahead and take it down. I think it'd probably be easier if I use a set of calipers. We're going to just reduce the size of this, the head. Now I find the safest way to use these calipers is actually pull it off instead of pushing it on. Getting close. Just about there. Now we've got to decide which end is going to be the top of the head and which end is going to be the bottom of the head. You can do it either way. We've got a little bit of damage here that we're going to have to get rid of to make this the top of the head, but I find that easier. Then we can just part it off. Otherwise, the other possibility is you turn the head on this end, but when you part it off, you may have to put it in a deep jam chuck to be able to clean that up. Let's change tool rests. Make it a little easier for me to get in close. So I'm going to switch to a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, start rounding this over, adjust the tool rest a little bit. We're going to turn a large bead, so anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift the handle, lift, twist, and roll. Now we're going to start bringing it down. We're going to start rounding it over a little bit on this side. Make a large bead. One of the nice things about turning green wood is it's so much more pleasant. There's less dust, and you don't have to sharpen your tools as much. Size this. This is going to be 2 centimeters, that wide, so it's going to be smaller than that. Okay, just going to get a feel for it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this down a little bit more. And okay, it's going to be smaller than this, so I'm just going to keep it where it is for the time being. Come back to the spindle gouge. Getting close. That looks good. I like the shape. We're going to do a little bit of sanding. Put just a few grooves here. You don't need to sand this much past 220. Cut off the damage from this live center by using a flush cut saw. And I want to sand that before we part this off, sand the end of it here, get that smooth. Okay, I've got it sanded up to 220, got this end smoothed off. Now we're just going to part this off using a thin parting tool. Rather than chase this around the floor, I'm going to use a thin flush cut saw to cut it off. Okay, we got that done. So now we're going to turn the body. It's 6.5 centimeters, or approximately 2 5/8 inches. So let's go ahead, and it's going to be, I think, let's go ahead and measure out to 10 centimeters so we can see where the bottom of it is. That brings us to right here. That'll be the bottom of the body. And I like to go ahead and mark that with a parting cut. Before we can decide which end is going to be the head, which is going to be the base of it. I think we're going to do it just like the other one. I think it's easier to round it off, remove any damage from the large end, and part it off. So, again, it's like a large bead, and just to get a feel for where that bead's going to be, the diameter is at 6.5 centimeters. It's there. The bottom of that, if we were doing a complete circle, would be there, but we're not. We're going to just measure halfway, and that's where it's going to start tapering down. So let's round it over. So we're going to nip the corners off first, get speed up a little bit. And again, it's anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift the handle till it cuts. In this case, we're going to twist, lift, and rotate the handle. Tool rest a little bit to clean off that end. Get rid of that little nubbin. And lower it just a little bit so we can cut on the center. And just anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift the handle until it cuts. And move forward to cut. Let the wood come to the edge. Now all we have to do is sand that. Just the tool rest so we can start coming in here. I'm going to go ahead and make a little wider cut with an 1/8 inch parting tool. And the bottom of the body is going to be, as shown in the diagram, 45% of X, or 4.5 centimeters. So let's measure that. Let's get a rough feel for what that's going to be. 4.5 on my calipers. Be right about there. And it's going to be a little bit less than that part, so that's good. Well, most of the wood's got to come off down here, so this is what we're going to work back from. Check that size again. And we're almost there. Just a little bit more. I think I can probably refine this cut with a skew, make it a little easier to sand. So let's do that. Since it's going to be a planing cut, we want to raise the tool rest. So why do you raise the tool rest when you're going to do a planing cut? Well, it's easy. This is a 20-degree bevel on this side, whereas if we're doing a spindle gouge, it's 40 degrees. Now the included angle are both 40 degrees, but this is only ground on two sides, so one particular angle is 20 degrees. So we need to get a little higher up to make it comfortable for that planing cut. So we want to cut it somewhere around 11 o'clock on the clock. This is the clock face. Anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift the handle till it cuts. Let's double check that one more time. A little more. And we're going to call that good. Now all we got to do is get after it with a little sandpaper. 120 grit. Slow the speed down to about 1/3 of what we were turning at for sanding. we got it all sanded, let's go ahead and part off the body using the thin parting tool. Speed up a little bit. Well, somewhere around 1,000. Give ourselves a little room on that part so we don't bind. And I'm going to go ahead and just start this off with one hand. Okay. So now we got the head. And we got the body. Now let's do the ears. Now the ears are going to be a little bit smaller than the body. In my case, we're going to make them 55% of X, so that's going to be 55 millimeters. So let's take it down just a little bit, because remember this was about 65 millimeters. This will take it down a little. That's probably pretty close. Let's measure it. 59, a little bit more to go, but not much. Okay. Let's clean up the end. This is going to be the outside of the ear, so we want the easiest way to clean that up is do that now with the, okay, again, that spindle gouge cutting on center. Okay, now we're going to bring it back, and we're going to mark where the, I'm going to use that, I've got plenty of room here for both those ears, so let's use that 1/8 inch parting tool, so I have room to kind of get in there and sand a little bit. And I'm not going to get real fussy with how measuring these ear widths. It'll be somewhere, in my case, 5 or 6 millimeter. It's not going to make a lot of difference. I'm going to take a spindle gouge and just kind of clean that up a little bit, round it over. And now we've got it. I could go ahead and do the other ear, but I like to finish it off before I do the next one. So let's sand this up and then we'll start the next one. Now we're going to part off this ear, again with a thin parting tool. I've got a little 1/8 inch gap in there, so I've got room to kind of make both cuts overlapping so it doesn't bind. Catch it, keep them chasing around the floor. I think I'm going to twist it off now rather than run the risk of chasing around the floor. Okay, so I can clean that up with a belt sander. Now let's face this end off before we measure how far off it's going to be. And I think the easiest way for me to clean up this damage is going to be using a negative rake scraper. So I'm just going to come across there with this scraper and get this nice smooth surface. In final assembly, we want the body to lean forward just a little bit. We want the trunk and head to lean forward a little bit, as shown in this diagram. So we need to cut off at an angle. So you need to come up with some kind of safe, secure jig. Whatever you do, don't try to hold this piece of wood in your hand. So I find this hand clamp becomes a very safe and effective way to solve a lot of bandsaw sawing problems. And I made this little jig where I can push both these through, and this will keep this end steady. I can sand the bottom, but that's exactly what I want. Now we have to do the same thing with the head. And it's important that you look for the proper grain alignment, what do you want in front before you do this. And I want to align this grain with the top of the head, so I think I want to do it that way. So I'll clamp this up. Do it the same way as I did before. Now we need to sand a couple of flats on here to give a glue surface. I like to pin parts together for security, so I'm going to do that by drilling a couple of holes and using some bamboo skewers. You can cut these bamboo skewers carefully with your flush cut saw, but most of the time I just tend to use some little clippers and clip them. I've got to glue that. Now I've got to do a matching hole on this side, so I just kind of line them up, make sure they're close. That's good. I prefer not to use CA glue on some of these larger surfaces because it can be kind of brittle. There we go. We'll let that dry. And now we've got to deal with the ears. The trick on the ears is we want them to come in just a little bit and down just a little bit. We don't want to do them like this. We want to do them more like this. So I'm going to put a little peg on each one, and then we'll figure out how to match the hole here. Be very cautious not to drill these peg holes in the ears too deep. So I've used a piece of tape. Just enough to hold the peg. I'm using these little 1/8 inch bamboo skewers for the pegs. So I made an ebonizing solution out of cleaning vinegar, or just vinegar, and steel wool pad. I might have a video on this in the future. You just Google it, but it works real well with woods with a lot of tannin, such as oak. And here's one I experimented with. It's kind of an interesting color, and I thought, well, I will color my my elephant with this solution and get it kind of a gray. It's coming out a little darker than I was expecting, but maybe if I sand it back, it'll come out gray. So we'll see.